I'm delighted to see so many people, especially after lunch, and I hope that I don't bore you to tears and put you to sleep. But I suppose the chairs are pretty comfortable, so nap at will. I hope that we have I think we have a pretty good story to tell today, actually, and I think it's going to be fairly entertaining. Moreover, we're going to talk about Windows Server 2003 under the hood, which means we're going to, just as you would at a mechanic, if something was tragically wrong with your car and they were going to tell you that you needed to replace your engine, you'd want to know what was going on. Well, we're going to take a brief look at some of the components that really make Windows Server 2003 an amazing operating system for a variety of solutions in a variety of settings. And I think about it in a lot of ways kind of like a stream channel, where if you look at it on the surface, if you've ever seen a vast river like the Mississippi or something, it's going to be much deeper in some areas than others, but you wouldn't necessarily know it from the surface. So I hope to be able to describe the surface of our stream channel, but also take a look at certain places within that stream channel and give you a better idea of kind of the architecture and some of the functionality at great depth here. My name is Suzuki. I work in the Windows Server Business Group and have a number of colleagues who are also here today who can answer some of your questions offline. With any luck, we'll have some time during this presentation to take a few of your questions. I have a number of slides as well as a number of demos, so let's jump into it. We're going to start with a more anecdotal discussion, I guess, to at least frame up what we're going to talk about. Because, again, Windows Server 2003 is such a massive platform, and the functionality has evolved, and there have been a lot of improvements and enhancements between the last rev of the product, we want to kind of give ourselves a basis for our conversation. But we're not going to spend too much time, and I'll move quickly because I know you guys want to get into it. So we'll get right into it, and we'll focus essentially on IT infrastructure, because most of us are IT pros. Myself and my team essentially focus on infrastructure as well. But we also want to plant a few seeds relative to the application platform, because we know you also have to service the developers in your teams and on your companies. And we'll also look at how you can leverage Windows Server 2003 to create an outstanding information worker infrastructure as well. So essentially the design philosophy, and I'm sure that some of you may have seen this slide before, is such that it went from a fairly essential idea of connecting people, technologies, and businesses into a much more scalable platform for deploying and developing and operating applications that federate and scale extensively in every direction. We talk about scale in a variety of different ways: scale up and scale out, scale down to portable devices and mobile devices, and scale away to cover your geographies for those of you who serve very large organizations. Windows Server 2003 was designed with every end user type in mind. So we start with improved productivity so that all of us who work with it every day will be able to be more productive, spend our time working on the valuable tasks and less time dwelling on the mundane work, troubleshooting workstation problems. There are a lot of dependability improvements, reliability, security enhancements, and scalability improvements as well. And finally, it's much more connected. We've integrated the .NET framework and a variety of other features to provide a complete server platform to quickly build and deploy, as well as maintain those solutions. And finally, overall improved economics mean a faster return on investment and improved total cost of ownership. And we also have a vast partner ecosystem, some of which some of you are a part of that. And we believe that lends to overall improved economics. So enough of the quick and dirty spiel. Let's talk about what we're going to get into here. IT infrastructure, we focus on security, reliability, availability, and scalability. We have a set of flexible tools for identity management, deployment of servers, and ongoing use. As an application platform, we have an integrated web services environment. It allows you to develop, deploy, and manage those web services easily with standard-based integration. And finally, for information workers, we have an outstanding environment to protect and insulate our end users. Some integrated media services to facilitate enhanced communications, as well as an infrastructure for managed instant messaging and user portals. So first, the IT infrastructure was designed for improved dependability. And it starts with this notion of a secure connected infrastructure. And I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. But at the core of it really is the Active Directory. And that really facilitates this idea of lower total cost of ownership, as well as the reduced risk of unauthorized access. Lower TCO is facilitated by having fewer identities and directories to manage. It's simplified through Active Directory and group policy. And we'll take a very close look at a number of those features later in the presentation, as well as see a pretty cool demonstration. Single sign-on, as well as some other enhanced features for federation, connect users to the network and then to their data, so it simplifies and streamlines those things and again improves productivity. The security features reduce the risk of unauthorized access and essentially maintain that productivity. No discussion that you will hear today would be complete without a discussion of security and patch management. From Windows Server, there are a few recommended paths. For small and medium-sized businesses, especially for small businesses, we offer Windows Update, which is a very quick and efficient way for users to leverage the web to get updates. For medium-sized businesses, there's a service that you can add on to Windows Server 2003 called Software Update Services. If you've been down on the exhibition floor, you know that we have a new revision of this called Windows Update Services, which has some added features. In today's presentation, we're going to talk about the existing implementation of it, SUS 1.0, because it is what's available and probably what many of you are using in your environments. And finally, for enterprises, there's another altogether different product called System Management Server 2003 that's used for patch management and software distribution. It's a part of the Windows Server system, but not strictly a part of Windows Server 2003. And I'd recommend, if you have questions about that, to go talk to that product group as well on in the cabanas or in the exhibition floor. So let's dig into SUS 1.0. Think of it as Windows Update inside your firewall. Really what it allows you to do is glean all of the updates as they're released by Microsoft and dictate how they're going to be disseminated to your network. Keep in mind, however, that some features are not supported in SUS 1.0. Some of these, however, may be supported by the new Windows Update services. Some of those that are not supported include non-Windows updates, third-party update publishing, of course, full app distribution. That would be something that you would look to Systems Management Server to do, driver deployments, and as well, there aren't really any public APIs at this point for programmatic access. SUS has two essential pieces: a client, which is based on the Windows XP Auto Update, as well as a server piece, which is referred to as a SUS server. So let's look at some of the architecture. Windows Update, of course, sits on the internet. You have your own internal environment. Oh, excuse me, going the wrong way. When security patches and security roll-ups are released by Microsoft, those are published, of course, through the internet via Windows Update, and those can be pulled down to your local SUS server. The SUS web admin allows you to manage those updates on that SUS server. As long as you deploy clients to your servers, workstations, and laptops, based on what you dictate, those machines will download and install those approved updates. So really, it's a way to protect your network and protect your people from missing those update emails you keep sending out. There's also an attitude about server scale-out per Windows Update Services or Software Update Services. For those of you who work in large organizations, you're still going to have one central SUS server, and that's going to distribute content to regional offices in possibly a couple different areas. And that can be content as well as a list of approved updates, which are then downloaded to clients based on the information that you provide through the admin interface. Additionally, to save on downloads to the branch offices, clients can be directed to pull the updates directly from Microsoft.com based on the information that you provide. Microsoft also has a fairly compelling server consolidation story at this point in time. There are three real key areas at this point that we want to focus on. First is the reduction of servers. Those include file and print servers, web servers, database servers. We also want to focus on reducing the number of platforms you have to support, and that's facilitated by Services for Unix 3.5, which is also a recent release. And then finally, we want to improve our operational efficiency by improving management. Things like the Microsoft Operations Framework and some other prescriptive resources help to that end. There have been a variety of enhancements that facilitate this. The server can be virtualized by CPU and memory boundaries. The Windows Resource Manager is an add-on that we're going to take a look at in just a second that allows you to control those things. You can have multiple applications coexist side by side, as well as have side-by-side DLLs. It allows you to isolate web server processes through improved features, as well as some hot swap features for memory and memory mirroring. Also a number of scalability features in terms of NUMA support and hyperthreading, as well as support for new large server machines. So now we're going to jump into our first demo, which is a look at the Windows System Resource Manager. And so here I have a Windows Server 2003 machine configured for this demonstration with the Windows System Resource Manager. Down here you can see that we've got a few applications running, and we've designed these essentially to tax this machine. This little machine is being taxed considerably by these, and you can see here, so taxed in fact that it's trying to keep pace. But you can see that the Windows System Resource Manager is logging the relationship of all these and how much they're consuming. If we look now at the interface, we will kick in the manager. So we've started managing. We have a variety of different criteria, as well as the policies themselves to control that. So let's implement the daytime policy. So we simply set that as the managing policy. We'll let this interface also take its time and show us exactly what the daytime policy says to do. So the daytime policy says our business critical application is going to get 70% of the CPU time. The batch processes we have running will only get 25%, and our default processes will get 5%. So if you look back at our performance scale, it's flip-flopped essentially a variety of the processes and allocated those specifically to the applications that we specified. Nighttime, everyone or our knowledge workers go home. We set a nighttime policy to manage that. And you can see the batch process now gets 60% of the CPU time. The business critical process only gets 30% of the time, so those of us that burn the midnight oil get cheated on our business critical applications. But you can see again, the Windows System Resource Manager has responded appropriately. There's a very handy calendar here, and it's going to take a second to load, but the calendar allows you to very conveniently schedule all of this. So once it loads, we'll enable that. And if we look again at what's going on, it changes it yet again based on exactly what we prescribed through the calendar. So you can see that the Windows System Resource Manager is a very convenient way to control exactly what your servers are working on. Okay, yet another kind of handy and cool feature is a leaky app. So if we close all of our existing apps and launch this leaky app, we should see a completely different thing happen here. So you can see that there's nothing really to manage here because everything's stopped. But if we look here, we see that we have leaky, and it's taken off in terms of what it's using. Well, the handy thing is we've made a policy to stop leak. And we say that once leaky gets to a committed memory allocation of 40, we're going to cut it down and stop the application. So let's kick this baby in. We'll set that as the managing policy. It'll disable the calendar, of course. And let's see what happens. Growing, still growing. And there are a variety of applications that can do this. Essentially what this enables is allows you as a IT pro to control runaway applications or the poor code that might have been deployed prematurely in your environment. And we should see the red line simply stop advancing once it hits 40, which it'll do in about 5 more seconds. Chugging right along. Ultimately, the Windows System Resource Manager allows multiple apps to coexist while allocating performance according to your business parameters. So the net of it is you can dictate what gets priority and what doesn't get priority. If you have important applications that have to continue to run, you give them priority and downgrade the others. And here you can see it stopped just as we dictated. Excellent. So give me 1 second to prep my other machines for the remaining demos today. And we'll continue. Okay. In addition to improved dependability, we have a variety of improved productivity advancements and enhancements. And a lot of these are in the way of Active Directory. And a lot of you probably are familiar with Active Directory, but we know based on our people in the field that a lot of people are still using NT4 networks. So the idea of identity management and directory services is really important because it allows you to leverage a great deal of flexibility and control over your network and the people who access it. There's this concept of trust, and you can exercise that across your Active Directory forests and keep an eye out for this idea of federation, which I'm sure will become more prevalent. There's actually a good white paper on Microsoft.com right now about the implications of that and what the value could be for companies that decide to go that route in terms of federating your organization with a foreign organization in a completely different domain. There have been a variety of enhancements, of course, and these extend to improve flexibility by way of domain rename, easier access via cross-forest trust, a new migration tool, improved credential management, better health monitoring, and quite a bit more. But we got to keep moving. Group policy, of course, is kind of one of the cornerstones of this. And it really allows one-to-many management. So a new policy is disseminated through the Active Directory, and it dictates how the end users work and what their computers are able to do. So essentially, group policy allows you to kind of standardize and mass customize the desktop experience of workers based on their roles. And there's a new group policy management console that we're going to take a look at in a second, and some of you may have seen this before, that makes it much easier to control this. The benefits include essentially reduced administration time, so you have to do less work at the helm of your servers in order to accomplish the same management tasks. And again, the mass customization provides scalability without having to sacrifice flexibility to customize. The enhancements in the release of Windows Server 2003 include more predefined policies, some 200 of them additionally in Windows Server 2003 over Windows 2000. Cross-forest support, more simplified deployment, better machine independence, and of course the group policy management console. It's really a powerful application of Active Directory because it improves the user interface to get to employ and deploy group policy. There are new capabilities including backup and restore, as well as import and export and copy and paste of group policy objects. You can now script GPO operations, although you still cannot script the settings within a GPO, and it enables customization and automation of those tasks, as well as new support for staging, which means that you can test new GPO scenarios without having to deploy them to a group of sandboxers. So let's take a look at Group Policy Management Console. Again, we have our Windows Server 2003 box, pardon me, that we will log into. The Group Policy Management Console probably won't be surprising to you in the way it looks because it's another convenient snap-in. But what it can do is pretty cool. So essentially our scenario is such that we have a finance department. We're a growing company, and we have a finance department, and we want to create an organizational unit for them. So we are going to call them Finance Department. And voila, it's created on the fly, and we want to create and link a GPO to the finance department. So we'll call it Finance GPO. And just like that, we have a Finance GPO within the finance department. So the finance people we know need a certain set of unique permissions and control, and we also want to customize their experience. So here in the Group Policy Object Editor, we're going to redirect their folders so we can back up their stuff. And we'll start with My Documents. My Documents redirection is a very powerful feature, and it's important to keep in mind that this is a security feature as well because it protects the users. So we're going to input the name of the server, and we'll give it a path, and we've already shared out a public folder and a finance folder within that. And here it's saying we're going to direct this to, for a given user, Claire. Claire's My Documents will be given this path. So we'll know where to find it. Additionally, we're going to remove the grant user exclusive rights so that we as administrators can continue to go in and control that. We apply that and away we go. We want to do the same thing for the desktop. So we'll quickly give them basic access. Let's see. To essentially the same location. Public, finance, and again, we're given the path. We'll do the same thing because we want to exercise control because we are, after all, Zeus. A couple other things we're going to do here. We want to give them a home page, and we're going to say, no matter what, this is where you have to go. Because this is the universal portal for all finance people near and far. Okay, and then we also want to customize their interface a little bit and give them a unique title. Because we want them to know that they're in the finance department, whether they work in San Diego or in Seattle. Okay, so we took care of that. We also want to apply a couple administrative templates. So if we look at the system, we want to be sure that their computer waits for the network to log on. That way we'll be sure that they get access to their documents promptly. Okay, so now we've got our group policy object configured for the finance department. Now we just have to put the right people in it. We've got a user who has been an intern, and she got hired. Amy F. Congratulations, Amy F. You get to move from intern status into the finance department. Voila. And just like that, we've taken Amy F. from a managed user within the interns to a managed user within the finance department. So what are the implications? If we switch to the client, we'll log in as Amy F. with the right password. And right now, the system is saying, okay, who am I and who do I belong to and what do I get to do? So if we open IE, if it's been applied properly, provided by finance department appears in the title, and we've gotten the finance department homepage. So we see that it has been. We're going to create a quick text document. And she has an important message that she wants to save. Now, if we go back to the server, we will see, based on the redirection of that folder, and I recall that it was C, public, finance, and in here should be Amy F. There she is. And on Amy F's desktop, we should have this text document, and there's her document. So just that quickly, we were able to create a policy for Amy F. We were able to create a policy for the finance department, and once we created it, we were able to drag and drop her right into that, and away she went. Now, another cool thing is that based on this, we know that you probably don't care about Amy F. In fact, as administrators, we never know the Amy Fs of the world necessarily, because we're often in a room that's way too cool because we have way too many computers running. So what we need to do is we need to use a convenient tool, and one has been created for us in the Group Policy Modeling Wizard. This convenient tool will allow us at a glance to see exactly what is going on with our group policy objects, like this scenario. The Group Policy Modeling Wizard allows you to dictate what you want to see and will create reports based on that. And it will render it right here before our very eyes, if my machine can keep up with it. So if we look at the settings and we show all, it gives us all the information based on the finance GPO. We know the path of the redirection. We know all the options that they're granted. We know where My Documents is redirected and all the associated things. And we also know what preferences we've dictated for the finance department. Additionally, the Group Policy Modeling Wizard can be used for end users as well. So if Amy's boss wonders what Amy's up to, and she says, why did Amy F get access to this document? We can say, well, based on the permissions you gave her, You told us to create this group policy object. We made it for Amy F. I'll let you see exactly why Amy F has what she has. And we can show all, and we can say, oh, well, based on exactly what you told us, she has certain rights to her documents, and she has redirection, and so she was able to get it because it was saved. So those are just a couple of the features available in the Group Policy Management Console. Ultimately, Group Policy Management Console is a time-saving feature for all system administrators. Okay. There are a variety of automated management enhancements. I was amazed last night at how popular management is. Everyone was huddled around that mom booth like crazy. And I don't know if it was because they were giving away backstage passes to the party on Wednesday or what, but there are a variety of enhancements that we should discuss that are worthy of our attention. For example, enhanced automation through command line and scripting, intelligent control through WMI, guided configuration wizards. For example, by default, when you kick Windows Server 2003 off on a new deployment, you have the ability to manage and configure your server through wizards. For novice users, it is much more convenient. For advanced users, it's much faster, so it serves everyone effectively. Also, there's enhanced flexibility in terms of emergency management, lights out support, and event tracking and reporting. Another key feature and enhancement comes in the form of automated deployment services. And there is actually a great hands-on lab available at TechEd where you actually do a deployment. This is the first time it's been possible in a hands-on lab environment. My team had a hand in creating that, so I strongly recommend you take a look at that if this intrigues you. Automated deployment services, as the name implies, is a very flexible and fast platform for large-scale server deployment and administration. It allows you to do traditional imaging, and it has added flexibility benefits as well as improved security, as well as perform scripted administration. The deployment has a few important advantages, not the least of which are intelligent compression, which means smaller image size, so it's a little bit lighter on the line, and it has increased flexibility. It supports imaging, of course, of 2000 and Windows Server 2003 servers only at this time, however. There's a secure remote deployment framework, so it has headless PXE support, and I'll go through the infrastructure and architecture of the solution in just a second. And it has a lightweight pre-OS deployment agent, so the client picks that up in a matter of seconds and is able to walk through it quickly. Moreover, it's an extensible framework for customization, so you can script thousands of these to run at a time. You can count on reliable remote execution with ADS. Centralized scripting, again, of an entire server farm will allow you to automate your administration. As well, you've got a persistent log. All transactions are logged in a database, so it allows you to log all administrative activities, whether they're deployment-related or administrative-related. And finally, there's a versatile set of user interfaces. A common MMC that you'll be very pleased to see, I'm sure, for point-and-click operation, and a very convenient programmatic automation interface. Essentially, the benefits of ADS are that you can lower total cost of ownership in bare metal server builds through script-based administration. So the idea is zero-touch server builds from bare metal with a Windows and a Microsoft-supported solution. Secure script-based administration of 1,000 servers as easily as one. Furthermore, you can improve the consistency, security, and scalability of your Windows Server data center. So if you know you've got a new hosting client coming on, you can, in a matter of, I hate to say minutes, but literally in a matter of minutes, truly, you can image a variety of new machines and have them up and running on Windows Server 2003. It also allows you to leverage your existing server administration investments because you can extend and enhance your current tools using ADS. So how does it work? How can we say zero-touch builds from bare metal? There are a couple key pieces here. The server from which these are being deployed is called the controller, the ADS controller. The destination machine is called the target server. So keep that in mind as we go here. The bare metal server PXE boots, and then the task sequence is initiated by the controller. The controller blows down a DOS image for the hardware configuration and transfers deployment agent to the RAM disk. Then the deployment agent pre-operating system is blown down via SSL. So already we have security. And the encrypted image is downloaded and deployed. And then that image is personalized and boots to a full operating system with the ADS agent. So that facilitates the future administration of that ADS deployed device. From an administrative perspective, again, this concept of secure script-based administration on 1,000 servers as easily as it's done on one server. So very quickly, you initiate script-based administration on as many servers as you like. Communication goes out via SSL. Communication relative to the success or failure of that task comes back to the ADS controller, and it's all stored in the database. Very elegant solution. Again, you can see that solution in a hands-on lab here at TechEd. So moving on, there are a lot more features to cover. We've got to keep on moving. Intelligent file and storage enhancements. There are a variety of them that are important. And in fact, I'm going to jump to notes here so that I don't lead you astray. First of all, access. Distributed file system flexibility is greatly enhanced. A key important point I want to make is that because NTFS is a true journalistic file system, check disk has to be used less often, which is a very handy feature for those of us who've had our hands in operating systems for many years. In the event that it does need to be check disked, check disk performs twice as fast as it did with Windows Server 2003. There are all these little bits of data and gems of data I want to keep telling you. Performance, of course, has been improved 100 to 140% overall over Windows 2000. We've implemented multipath I/O. There are also a bunch of new administration features. Of course, volume shadow copy services is a key new one that we'll spend some time on in the next few slides. That facilitates end-user file recovery via previous versions, and I'll show you a variation on a demo of that. Also, automated system recovery is a new feature which improves productivity by enabling one-step restore of operating systems. And it includes being able to restore system state and hardware configuration in disaster recovery situations. So overall, again, we're trying to maintain a customer focus and give you the tools that you need to keep your systems operating optimally. So what is a shadow copy? Let's drill down on this. Everyone knows about this concept of taking data snapshots. Volume shadow copy services is really an infrastructure for creating just a point-in-time copy of one or multiple volumes. It appears as though it's static, even though the original data is changing. And I hope that makes sense. Let's take a look at that. So our arbitrary datum times 0, we start writing data to a disk. We want to take a snapshot. So at time 1, we pull out a shadow copy. But everyone's still working. So the static shadow copy is pulled out while data continues to be written to the disk. It's very convenient and facilitates a lot of cool things. So let's talk about how it works. The requestor is a process that requests the shadow copy to be taken. The requestor can be a shadow copy client created by Microsoft. It could be a variety of different things. Then the shadow copy service goes out to the writers, which could be something like a database, and says, hey, I've got to take this information from you right now. And it goes out through the provider interfaces and dumps that to the various volumes. It's beautiful, an elegant solution. Let's take a quick look at how that can work. So once again, our machine is in the state that we left it. Our old friend Amy F. is still a member of the finance department, and she's working like crazy and frantically, and she thinks this demo is great and all that. We as administrators know that we have some important work to do and don't want to be hassled by our end users, so we're going to go in and configure shadow copies. Now, this is the hazardous part of the demo, because what's going to happen right now is I'm going to enable shadow copies. And of course, I'm going to accept the default schedule, which can be customized through that settings button that you see right next to it. But what is happening right now is this system is taking that snapshot. It's saying, right now, I need everything on the C drive. Everything. Give it to me. Boom. You can apply this to just a database server. You can apply it just to one My Documents folder. You can apply it just to one file share. You can apply it to nearly anything. So right now this is taking it. And fortunately, because our volume is relatively small, we were able to do it in a short amount of time. Now, what did we do? We took a snapshot of C. So that means Amy F., who's back working madly on her presentation and gleaning all this information from the finance department homepage, is working, and actually she's a closet poet. So her love of Langston Hughes poetry made her read this because she was so blue from having to crunch so many numbers. And she accidentally saved the file after deleting her favorite poem. And this is the part you may have seen before. Restoring that file is simple as going to the file properties. The previous versions tab was added by something that I did before the demo, and I implemented the client. And the client, to jump back, as you recall from our infrastructure here, is the requestor. That's this piece right here. And this piece is what gives us this previous versions tab. So if we now say, restore that baby, yes, we want to restore it. I got to have that poem back because nothing's going to cure my blues. We open this guy back up, and there it is. It works on the file level. It also works on the folder level. If we delete the file and it goes away, we do the same thing. The folder properties also gets a previous versions tab. We want to restore it. Yes, please restore my document. And everything else from the folder I may have deleted. And here again's the weary blues. Now, as I recall, based on the group policy that we configured for the finance department, we also redirected the desktop because we know that our financiers don't always organize their documents that well. So the fancy message that she created about this fantastic demo, she also modified and needs to submit it as a report to her manager. So it should work. This should work. Again, we have the previous versions folder. It appears that we have a previous version. Give it back to me. We get confirmed that we have it. And again, it was restored properly. So you can see that this is a pretty potent solution for a user like Amy F. in her day-to-day environment. But Volume Shadow Copy Services is much more than a means to reduce calls to the help desk. It really is. It really facilitates a whole lot more. Not only does it facilitate open file backup, so those of us who spend time actually creating vast documents can have them backed up on the fly, but it also eliminates the notion of a backup window. Line of business applications, other business critical applications can be backed up while they're being used. You don't have this downtime from midnight to 2 a.m. when the application's taken down to perform a backup. So what does that mean? Ultimately that you can restore more frequent, more recent backups without having to inconvenience your people. Perhaps you can have a graveyard shift now inside your organization. Applications register also how to be backed up and restored. So for multiple volume data stores, for example, you can dictate, start with database A, then move to database B, then pull database C, and store them this way. And we're also going to be able to restore them this way. You dictate that, it happens. Finally, and somewhat similarly, the notion of data freighting. Take all those data from a point in time, move it off to a SAN, and then deploy that to other hosts elsewhere. Very potent tool. Okay, moving on to connectivity. Roll up your sleeves because it's going to get a little bit hot. This stuff is pretty intense. And again, I'm going to catch up in my notes so that I can keep pace with some of these architecture discussions. There have been a variety of connectivity improvements, including but not limited to remote access via radius failover, proxy and load balancing, a number of VPN improvements, and we're going to spend several slides discussing those. Some of those include quarantine, network address translation, and enabling of load balancing via VPN. And finally, some improvements in wireless. Of course, Windows Server 2003 supports wireless, but we now have passwords enabled over 802.1x and faster roaming and re-authentication. So, real quick, a snapshot of the VPN solution. You have your clients, you have your gateway by which you access the network. You get there via industry standard protocols. Your network is going to authenticate you. It's going to apply group policies so you don't do things that you might not otherwise want to have your people do. And finally, you have deployment tools to enable your clients to access it conveniently. So looking at kind of this solution stack for VPN, you have first integrated VPN clients, and there's a rash of excellent clients that support all the new good stuff that we'll go over in a second. The gateway is handled by routing and remote access services. Windows Server 2003 supports industry standard protocols. IIS and AD control authentication and policy. And finally, CMAC for deployment. All exist within Windows Server 2003. So we have a very nice, convenient, well-packaged solution to handle all aspects of the VPN solution. So looking first at the client, there are a variety of VPN clients for L2TP over IPsec as well as PPTP. L2TP over IPsec with NAT is provided for Windows Server 2003, Windows XP, and all flavors of Windows 2000. As well, the PPTP client is integrated in Windows Server 2003 and XP, Windows 2000, NT4, and even as far back as ME and Windows 98. You can get an L2TP over IPsec client for Win9X as well as NT4, which is available on the web, and incidentally, it also includes NAT support. So you can use IPsec, which is our next conversation. IPsec is a very important thing because we know very well, all of us probably, that network security problems can reside within the network and without of the network. And we have to protect our sensitive data. And we have 4 good reasons, and you probably collectively have thousands of other good reasons to use IPsec. First of all, encryption. We also want to prevent modification of the data that's transmitted. We want to authenticate the machines at the transport level. And also, IPsec allows us to punch fewer holes through our firewall. So essentially allows us to maintain a more locked-down environment. The great thing, too, about the Windows Server 2003 implementation of IPsec is it uses IETF standard protocols. Relative to the scenarios in which you'd want to use IPsec, packet filtering, securing host-to-host traffic on specific paths, securing traffic to specific servers that have sensitive and important data, L2TP over IPsec tunneling for your VPN connections, and we'll talk more about that shortly, and then tunnel mode for supported site-to-site communications. There are a couple scenarios, however, where IPsec is not recommended. Those include domain member to domain controller, as well as IPsec for the entire network. This should not be used in a blanketed way. It is probably not the most efficient way to manage your communications. So, let's dissect how IPsec works. Okay, there are essentially 2 key phases here, if you will. The first phase, well, let's take it back a step. The application wants to communicate, so via TCP IP, it first says, oh, I want to make this communication. So it says, hey, IPsec, let me in. And that says, oh, well, first I have to get my internet key exchange started. So that kicks off a security association. And that's the first, kind of the main mode, if you will, which establishes that internet key exchange security association. Okay? The second phase then exchanges a second set of security associations, and the reason there are 2 is because they are one-directional for IPsec. So you have unidirectional IPsec security associations made from initiator to responder, and those guys say, okay, IPsec driver, you have permission, and then the communication can fly. So again, we've got these industry standard protocols that are fully leveraged. First, we establish the IKE Security Association, then we establish the IPsec Security Association, and then it's opened up for communication. So again, IPsec in Windows Server 2003 facilitates NAT traversal, network load balancing with IPsec support, clustering with IPsec support, full command line support, resultant setup policy support for group policy, faster and improved filtering, so IPsec operates a little bit more efficiently with Windows Server 2003. Accesses the computer from network, so-called authorization, as well as a variety of security enhancements. Okay. Again, Of course we support wireless. How is the question? Again, we're under the hood, so we're going to take a little bit closer look. By way of review, 802.1x, of course, is the standard protocol for authenticated network access. Supported on Ethernet as well as wireless. It provides user and machine authentication using radius. Okay, so you have to have a radius server sitting on the other side. And it's the same used for dial-up and for VPN authentication. So it folds in with the rest of the story. And since Windows 2000 IAS, it's been integrated with Active Directory. The level of network access is under admin control. So you can say no access, meaning you don't get anything. You don't get an IP address, you don't get anything. You're not allowed here. Complete access or guest access with only a limited set of permissions. Supports distribution and refresh of encryption keys to clients to defeat well-known attacks. So, for example, brute force attacks and what have you, and we'll take a kind of a schematic look at that at the end of this conversation. And finally, it supports certificates and passwords. So, how does it really work? If in the context of wireless, many of you are using probably wireless at the conference today. Your laptop computer connects to the access point and says, I want in. But the access point says, I don't know who you are, so you're not welcome here. And then your system says, oh, wait a second. Here's who I am. And it throws its identity over EAP because the access point says, oh, I recognize your protocol. Tell me who you are. The access point, which also could be considered kind of an access server, if you will, connected to the radius server, sends that EAP identity over radius to the server. The access is challenged, so it comes back in the form of an EAP request for credentials and says, you say you're Amy F. in the finance department, but how do I know? The EAP response comes back with a password into the server, back out of the server. It says, oh, you really must be Amy F. Okay, you're in. Similarly, at that same point, if Amy F submitted the wrong password, no dice, she wouldn't be in. So that's a quick look at the actual infrastructure of it. And finally, of course, the key exchange means that they'll be able to continue to communicate. Okay, looking at that gateway, there are a variety of routing and remote access services and a number of improvements that came in Windows Server 2003. Of course, we're going to pop security, improve secure remote access connection technology, including per-session VPN packet filters, improve performance, including offload of hardware encryption support and load balance support for VPN, as we mentioned earlier, and improved manageability with integrated Active Directory authentication, again, the example of Amy F, and support standards like Radius. So again, kind of to take it back up a level and give ourselves a real-world idea here, hackers have a variety of ways in, as we know. And there are tons of wireless tools that you can probably find through Google. Okay? And just a few of them are mentioned there. And if they pound hard enough, they can get in and get access and start pounding away. While implementing the Windows Server 2003 features, it'll check for a valid X509 certificate and block that hacker. So essentially, directory-enabled networking, secure wireless support, fairly effortless PKI services, standard-based VPN service, and password or certificate-based access all help secure this mobile access, whether it's wireless or wired. Okay, now, again, my friends, we are IT pros, and I realize that, but there are some implications for developers because we have to support them, and they're our friends ultimately, because when we're in a pinch and we need a quick script that might be out of our expertise, we impose on them and they whip it up and they might complain, but they get the job done. So we're going to start looking at dependability improvements, and the main one being IIS 6. And I'm sure that a lot of you have heard a lot about IIS 6 in the last year or so since Windows Server 2003 was launched. But there are a variety of very notable pieces that we should review again. Again, security enhancements. IIS 6 comes out of the box turned off, first of all, and you have to go through a process of implementing it. Once it's implemented, it runs at least privilege account level with a number of secure defaults. We have improved reliability, And again, by way of looking under the hood, we're going to look at the architecture of IIS 6 compared to IIS 5 and see why it's more reliable. It has higher availability, including process recycling, and again, the architecture will give us more insight into that. And finally, scalability is massively improved. Windows Server 2003 can run over 2,000 pooled applications compared to fewer than 3,000 with IIS 5. So there are some nice implications there for those of us who have to host websites, and lots of them. You can run over 1,000 isolated apps on one box, each with its own security identity, compared to a maximum of 100 on IIS 5. So an order of magnitude increase there. And also support for web gardening, which is kind of a cool feature. Okay, so a quick look at how IIS 5 worked. Essentially, IIS 5 was designed to have one process, inetinfo.exe. And the main function of that web service was that it could farm out requests to one or more out-of-process applications. So for standard web pages to go in, ask for it, and spit it back out over TCP/IP. Easy enough. For web applications, it would go in, redirect it, and out comes your web application, whatever it may be. Well, in the case that something goes horribly wrong and it doesn't work, you're completely out of luck. Well, that's changed with IIS 6. IIS 6 has been totally redesigned with two new components that use new kernel mode drivers. Okay, and those two new components are http.sys, which is this bottom piece right here at the kernel level, as well as the World Wide Web Service Administration and Monitoring Service, which sits up here. So looking again at how those requests work, standard web pages, essentially the same thing. But if that happens to fail, the World Wide Web Service goes in and says, oh boy, we can't have this, and it restarts the service or restarts the application, whatever it may be. And away it goes. And once again, we have better availability of web applications. So IIS was engineered with a security-conscious architecture. We know that this is one of the points, vulnerability points, through which rogues can enter your network and cause damage. So IIS, again, runs with the lowest possible privilege. And the new architecture reduces denial of service potential through advanced health monitoring, as well as recycling of those applications and CPU accounting. Okay, another quick conversation. Application platform enhancements. Again, we've got a variety of things here that benefit us as IT pros. First of all, we have a new way to build, deploy, and manage applications. It allows us to be more productive, it improves dependability, and of course connectivity. And we're starting to run out of time already, I can't believe it, so I'm going to keep zipping here. Actually, let me go back. The .NET framework allows you to write less code, which means as IT pros, we have less code that we have to manage. There are easy web services that can be created with ASP.NET, as well as a rich set of built-in services, which simplifies deployment. So when we have to get to collaborating with our IT pros to launch these applications, it's a lot more convenient. Improved dependability means better code access security and application security framework in which all those applications live. Also, we have these excellent standards, XML, SOAP, WSDL, and UDDI, as well as passport integration. And we'll take a look at UDDI here in a second in our connectivity discussion. So, UDDI, in a nutshell, is an infrastructure for web services. It allows you to basically create a structured and standardized way to describe and discover services. Although it's a developer platform which allows you to share and reuse schemas, taxonomies, and services, as well as Visual Studio and Office Tools integration, it allows us to classify those applications and services using standard and custom taxonomies. So kind of allows us, and especially in a large organization, to better control the environment. And also facilitates dynamic binding of applications to web services. You can SOAP enable COM applications. You can use SOAP with no new code, which allows you to leverage existing apps within the new architecture. And you can traverse firewalls with the existing applications as well. We want to note, however, that it won't work for all objects, such as complex data types and so forth. In those situations, you want to use COM interop or wrap existing COM components. And finally, just to keep things moving, mobile deployment write it once, deploy it on any device using the .NET framework. It allows fast creation and deployment of those applications. There are over 140 devices supported out of the box, and there are a variety of expositioners showing off those devices at the show this week. And we also, of course, have the .NET framework integrated as a part of ASP.NET. And I believe, incidentally, that the .NET Compact framework is now integrated as well. Okay, our information workers. A lot of our responsibility is to facilitate their productivity. So we're going to start by talking about Terminal Server and what it does. There are also a variety of other improvements, including file performance. But kind of the big picture of Terminal Server is that we have our data sitting behind our applications, and our users connect via their devices through a variety of means, VPN, dial-up, and what have you. Terminal Server, or Terminal Services, is a means to access those applications and data. It centralizes it, accelerates it, and allows you to have the same experience on nearly any device. And in fact, there are organizations, I think Enterprise Rent-A-Car, if I recall from a case study on the website, is an example of a company that uses Terminal Server exclusively for their core line of business application. Now, keep in mind that it is not a panacea. Terminal Services is challenged somewhat in graphically intensive applications, as well as those applications that need to be used offline, obviously. However, there are 3 convenient modes. Remote desktop for administration, and many of us use this, formerly known as TS Administrator mode. Requires no cal, so there's a great advantage there. Terminal Server itself, formerly known as TS Application Server mode. And of course, that does require CALs. And finally, Remote Assistance, which is identical to the Windows XP Remote Assistance. The great features associated with RDP 5.2 include full mode, MMC mode, and web mode, greatly improved usability, high color, as well as resource redirection. You can use it in full desktop mode or a specific application, as well as there are a variety of optimizations for network and performance improvements, so you can kind of control your experience that way. And finally, we have an enhanced security environment by kind of another fancy new feature. So let's take a quick look at these. And again, I think that a lot of you use this day to day if you're like me. But we're back here at MEF's desktop, and we're just going to jump into RDP. So here's a seemingly innocuous RDP window, but if we expand our options, working from the end forward, we can see that we can select an improved experience. So if we say that we're working on a LAN, by default it selects all of these options so that we have a very real Windows experience, including our desktop background. If we don't want to see the desktop background, we can just deselect. We can also instantiate programs at the time of logon via this interface. Simply input the path and file name, or start from that folder. More options to control the experience. We don't want sound. We want to use our keyboard in full screen mode. And here's our local devices option. So for example, we'll, in this example, connect our disk drives, our local disk drives, to the remote computer. Another great advantage is you can control the display resolution as well as the color settings. And finally, dictate exactly who you're connecting as. So we are going to connect, again, to our same server. 43 WinLab Demo is our server. We'll connect as the administrator. And our domain is NW Traders. Okay, if we connect, and if I didn't double strike a key during my password, we'll get this prompt. So this is just telling us, hey, you said you're going to connect your disk drives. Be sure that you really want to do this. Yes, I'm sure. We've been automatically logged in. And here's our server, and we can see that it really is. If we go in here to our administrative tools, and here's group policy management that we looked at earlier. The thing I want to point out, however, is that if we look at my computer, we have this local access to our local drives. So if we view the C drive, we could very quickly and easily copy over files needed as an administrator from nearly any machine that we want. A very cool feature. Okay, back at the ranch. Again, we have a great information worker infrastructure, and a variety of the features that we discussed previously complement that. Again, shadow copy restore. We saw how AMEF could restore documents from nearly anywhere that we told her folders to share. We have local resource access for terminal server sessions that we just saw in that demonstration. And finally, no-touch, so-called VPN, RAS, and PKI setup. Okay, as a final note, we have a great platform for information worker connectivity through Windows Media Services. And very briefly, it is an intense platform for media distribution, fast streaming, as well as improved recovery from network disconnects at the point of loss, great scalability and manageability, 2 times the number of concurrent users that were possible with Windows 2000. There's an MMC, a web browser, or command line script administration, so all of the ways that you'd expect to be able to control that environment. And finally, great extensibility and developer reach. New plugin architecture supported by familiar languages and scripting, as well as an object model with over 1,000 server interfaces. So, to summarize, you really have seen, I hope, kind of the breadth of the stream. We have a very massive platform here. And some of these services really allow you to take advantage of the new features in Windows Server 2003. It improves productivity. It's going to allow you as an administrator to be able to control that environment more conveniently. There are a lot of features that improve its dependability and reliability. Great connectivity features on the application side as well as the knowledge worker or information worker side. And finally, a great platform for economics as well. So to wrap up, again, we've got a great set of community resources, tons of webcasts coming up in the next year, some 1,400 that you can take advantage of. Most or all, I believe, are free, and you can learn more at the webcast kiosk down on the exposition floor. You can join news groups, visit community sites, create your own local user group, as well as see the existing community sites. I'd ask you to please fill out a session evaluation. Let me know how I did. Your scores will give my manager an indication of how I did today. What I find the most use of is the written remarks as well, though. So I welcome that. And I thank you all very much for your attendance today. And we have a couple minutes, I think, that we can take a couple questions if anyone has any. Thank you.